We start here. More South Africans who have been evacuated from Sudan are expected to arrive back home this morning. International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor is expected to be at the Tambo International Airport. The first batch of 10 South Africans rescued from Sudan arrived at the airport last night. This update now from SABC News reporter Khayelihle Khumalo is tracking the story for us, and he joins us from the Tambo International Airport monitoring the arrivals there. Khayelihle, thank you so much for your time this morning. So take us through what's happening there now.
Well, absolutely. We're still here at the Tambo International Airport, keenly waiting for the arrival of South Africans who have been evacuated from Sudan. So we do understand at this point in time there has been a delay of the flight. Now they are expected to land here at Tambo around 11:15. But there are families waiting with bated breath. You know, they've just been having as well a very harrowing experience where also Sudan has been experiencing internet blackouts where there hasn't been any communication whatsoever with their loved ones. So I'm just going to speak to one of the parents waiting for her daughter. She was based in Khartoum. So sir, thank you so much indeed and welcome to SABC News. Just talk to us about this moment as you're waiting for your daughter to come back home. How are you feeling at this point?
Hey, manje ngihappy kakhulu because ngithole message izolo ukuthi umntana umuntu ombovu wakahlomuka kangithi lo khulumayo uMandla wakahlomuka kangithi kule viki eliphelile besingalali man because wasithumela ama WhatsApp wasikhombisa amabhomu akhala ahlala bo 2 days singakhona ukumthola and singabi ne contact naye, angathola amanzi angatholi igesi because kungasena gesi ngasena ma airtime. Then after 2 days sathola call ukuthi no use basini bazama uku-escape baya Egypt. Then the following day wasitshela ukuthi no sekase basini Egypt sebafikile le Egypt. Izolo iswe sithole kahle ikholo ukuthi hayi babuya but bazodlula eKenya. And then today bayeza. Manje today ngihappy because babuya since ngifike la 8 o'clock, but now about past 11 salindile, but manje kusele few minutes ukuthi sibabone. Sesihappy ngaloko, sizobalinda la airport. Sijabulile njengoba basindile kwingozi zonke zale eSudan. Sibonga nesupport from South Africa ukuthi kwazi silandela bona le because bebangasena mali bangasena nix. Sesibheke nje ukuthi bafike sibonga lokho nje si happy today. Thanks.
Okay baba, awusitshela ukuthi benizizwa njani ngini family ngesikhathi nine where there was no communication naye. So namhlanje lelo suku lifikile nithini nje niumndeni?
Besingalali leso sikhathi, kunamalanga la besingalali bese singasazi nokuthi senze njani because ukude nathi asazi, siyafona usuku nemini akuna contact. Luckily kune friend yakhe esikwazile ukuthi sithole from ngale, yakwazi ukuse reply ukuthi no basive babasusile lapha babasekwenye indawo esafe. Now everybody sine sure ukuthi uma family wonke la are happy because sithole ubunzima from the whole week since le Saturday yasuka ngayo lempi. That time bekasithumela amabhomu nayo yonke into lapha, ithombe zamabhomu namabhazuka, yonke lento le singazi ukuthi uzo survive. Siyabonga today.
Okay, Siyabonga kakhulu. Thank you so much indeed, sir, for your time. So obviously, Mxolisi, really from the parent, really, just in summation, talking about a very harrowing experience for the daughter who was right in the crossfire in Sudan, but also just talking about also the assistance that they got from government. So I'm just going to really step out of the shot so that we try and monitor that board in terms of the flight. So there is a particular delay at this point, so we're still just keenly waiting for that moment. So that's KQ760 from Nairobi, but we're expecting them to, of course, in fact, to land at any time at this point in time. So a very, very incredible moment for the families who have been waiting for this particular moment, and we'll just continue to make sure that we keep you posted. So they'll be welcomed by the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Dr. Naledi Pandor, and the Department of International Relations and Cooperation has been at the forefront in terms of making sure that they get in touch with their counterparts in Sudan, in Egypt, and in many other countries as well, where South Africans have been evacuated. You know, when we were here last night and listening to some of the stories from the 10 evacuees, you could really see the very seriousness of what's happening in Sudan, where they were really just at the very that particular conflict and facing that particular standoff. So really very, very harrowing accounts from them. Well, certainly, Mxolisi, we can confirm that the Kenya Airlines aircraft just landed here at Tambo International Airport. That's where we expect a significant number of South Africans who were evacuated from Sudan to really just come home and reunite with their families. So there's a great deal of optimism, especially from the families, and the sense of relief, really, from the families who have been waiting here with bated breath for their loved ones. So let's just get more reactions from the family. So, sir, thank you so much. You were telling us off air that you have been waiting for your son.
That's correct.
Just take us through to this experience. I mean, I would imagine it's been quite a very horrific experience to wait, but today it seems to be a day of culmination for all the waiting period that you endured.
Indeed it is. It's been very stressful though the last 2 weeks, and especially when the fighting was all around the buildings where they were staying, and getting them out and eventually getting to the border and getting up into Egypt. Yeah, but we are very relieved that they're here on terra firma, so back in South Africa. Very happy, and the stress is over.
You were telling us that your son was right in the epicenter of the fighting, where the warring factions are fighting in Khartoum. He sent you all those gore videos. How was that experience?
Well, it was at first the guys thought it was just a local flare-up and it would be over in a couple of days and they'd go back to work. But after a week, it intensified, and at one stage the RSF were all around his building. They even came in there to charge their cell phones. And he said it was very hectic. The phone calls we had with him with the bullets going off sounded worse than Diwali, he said.
And obviously, I mean, the issue of the evacuation for them, I would imagine he was part of the group that had to be ferried in buses going to Egypt. Khartoum is a very difficult destination because it's far from other parts in terms of the neighbors of Sudan. So how was that encounter for him? How did he really just cope under such a tremendously and stressful situation?
Well, we didn't have a lot of communication from when he left his building and on the road up towards Egypt. A few days there was no communication whatsoever. They did spend 2 days up on the border itself, but it was a long bus ride, many hours in the buses, many hours trying to get across the border. His passport was still in Khartoum at the Home Affairs in Khartoum, and then there were issues at the border. Got through eventually and got to Aswan. great relief, but many, many hours of agony and waiting. But finally over.
Maybe it's just families. What do you guys say to the authorities, to the Egyptians, South African government, the gift of the givers, and many other people who are very instrumental in terms of making sure that this evacuation succeed? I would imagine there is a sense of gratitude.
Absolutely, absolutely. If it wasn't for the people on the ground assisting the South Africans, the gift of the givers, DIRCO, it wouldn't have happened. They might still be sitting there.
All right, thank you so much indeed, sir, for your time. So obviously, I mean, Khayelihle, it's a very incredibly moving time for the families. It is indeed a very poignant moment, really just to give you a feel of what is currently happening now. So eventually the plane has finally landed all the way from Nairobi, albeit with a bit of delay because they were supposed to be here by 10:55. So they are currently disembarking from KQ760. So a lot of families, you can see that there is a sense of jubilation as the families are really just coming to terms with this, and really a very exciting moment really for them, because also with the issue of the internet blackout, there has been a lot of inconsistencies in terms of the communications. So at this point in time, let's try and get more reactions. Really, we'll keep it very short and sweet. Ma'am, you here as well. How are you feeling about today?
I'm very blessed. I'm feeling very excited and happy to see my husband and my kids and our helper. So I'm thankful for our government, the South African government. I'm thankful for Jason Munyela. He's been communicating with us. We have been hopeful and faithful that the family will come back safe, and we are grateful that today it's happening and they're coming back home safely.
How did you guys interact with the one who was stuck in Sudan?
Okay, from Sunday last week when they were evacuated from Sudan to go to Egypt, the border of Egypt, the WhatsApp, obviously somewhere we were interrupted, but WhatsApp helped us. When they got there since Monday, I couldn't communicate with them until Wednesday when they checked in the hotel in Ashan. But everything was through WhatsApp. The calls were not going through, obviously, from Egypt, but communication through WhatsApp was assisting us. And from the media side as well, everything was just perfect.
What the first thing you're going to do for him? I see you guys have got balloons, sheer jubilation at this point.
I wish I can do a white wedding for him. But I'm just going to hug him and be thankful that he was able to take care of the kids when I'm not there, and our helper. I'm just happy. I'm very happy. I'm blessed.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. So, Khayelihle, that's a feeling right here at the Tambo International Airport, with the families really quite jubilated to reunite with their loved ones who are stuck in Sudan. Obviously a very sad situation for the Sudanese given the very conflict that they have encountered. This is a very important country for Africa for so many reasons, located by the Red Sea, a very busy maritime route, the shipping route, so many vessels really, so quite an important country. So we're expecting during the course of the day where Minister Pandor as well is going to officially welcome the South Africans who are back in the country. We know that yesterday about 10 of them just landed here at Tambo, and they came through from Terminal A here for the international arrivals. So there's a sigh of relief. There's a sheer jubilation here, as you can hear from the families. But in Sudan, it's a very precarious situation, as quite a number of Sudanese are fleeing the country in light of the conflict that has engulfed the country, and quite a number of appeals and interventions as well that are being applied in terms of making sure that there is a long-lasting solution. So currently, Khayelihle, you ask yourself, where are they? The South Africans who just landed, they're still going through their immigration control, and eventually they will come out and then just get a chance to finally reunite with their families here.
Indeed, and all those emotions by the families, they are warranted, Khayelihle. Maybe just also, just take us through as to what time the minister is expected to arrive there.
So we do understand at this particular point in time that the minister is around, but at any moment, as soon as they come out, the South Africans who have just been evacuated from Sudan, so that's when the official proceedings, I do believe very short proceedings really, to welcome them finally back home, especially because the department has been very instrumental in terms of making sure that this day finally comes where the South Africans are rescued from Sudan, especially because it's been a very risky situation, but also riddled with a lot of complexities because they had to deal with a number of regulations at the border from Egypt, from other parts as well, but also a very sad situation because Sudanese, we do understand, others now they are fleeing to the neighboring countries like Chad, Central African Republic, Libya, and unfortunately some of these countries are also just going through their own internal struggles, but also in Sudan itself. The fears of what happened in Darfur. We know that in the early 2000s we saw that, so many killings, so many people died when the militias just mushroomed in Darfur. So great deal of concern about the volatility there in Sudan, but strong appeals as well from the neighboring countries. We do know that South Sudan President Salva Kiir Mayardit has been in touch with the two generals who are the main protagonists, de facto ruler of Sudan, General al-Burhan, and of course the leader of their rapid support forces as well, General Hemeti, trying to really just appeal to them to make sure that they do respect the ceasefire, but also making sure that the humanitarian access is given a green light. But where we are positioned at the Tambo International Airport by Terminal A arrivals, any moment from now, the South Africans who are stuck in Sudan will be coming out here, and of course there's quite a very massive number of people who are keenly waiting. Other families are really shy really to talk to us because their position is they're waiting for their loved ones to come out, and then thereafter they can really just engage with us. But others have been really fortunate enough with their time to really interact with the media here at the airport.
Khaya, I need to piggyback on your conversation earlier with DIRCO spokesperson Khayelihle Khumalo. Said that this was quite a complex effort to try and achieve. Speak to us about some of these complexities, and why it was so difficult to try and actually bring some of these people home.
It's a very unstable situation, Khayelihle. As you know that, you look at other countries as well, the convoys, as they were leaving Khartoum and many other cities in Sudan, some convoys really came under siege, so it was a very fluid situation. But also apart from that, we do know that some South Africans really did not have their travel documents, understandably so, because it is a conflict. So when you get an opportunity to run away, that's when you just escape and you leave your possessions and really just prioritize your life. So that's the particular situation that they had to face. Especially, we understand, for example, by the Egyptian border, that's where the challenges were, where some South Africans were not able to cross initially, but we do understand that that particular hurdle has been overcome. So all South Africans have been safely evacuated. So those are the complexities, really. But for South African authorities as well, they talk about this broad strategy where they said it was all-encompassing, where they were not just focusing on the diplomatic staff. They really wanted to make sure that the citizens from South Africa, but also even some of the neighboring countries as well. We know that Mr. Monyela, in fact, the spokesperson of the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, attributed that to South Africa's foreign policy of Pan-Africanism. When there is a strife, where there is a standoff, if there are assets and if they do have the means to assist, then they really had to make sure that they also help other African nationals who are caught up in the crossfire in Sudan. But of course, it's a very sad situation what's happening in Khartoum, especially because, just to give you an idea, Khayelihle, we just also heard from the former Prime Minister of Sudan. We know that there was a military civilian administration at some point, albeit it was transitional and there was a coup. But the former Prime Minister was warning that the Sudanese conflict could be worse than what we saw in Libya and Syria, especially because this is a very volatile situation where you have so many militia groupings and a lot of them really are getting agitated, and there's this very sad situation as well where you do have the organizations like the World Health Organization warning about a very precarious environment where the hospitals and other healthcare facilities are on the verge of collapse and the foodstuff are running low. And Khartoum, for example, the capital city of Sudan, is a significantly massive town. 6 million people live there, and so there is a great deal of concern about the situation currently. Well, I'm going to say it's a bit of a scrum here because obviously there's quite a significant number of people waiting for South Africans who have been evacuated from Sudan. But joining us now once again is the department spokesperson, a frequent visitor once again here in our set. So, Clayton, I mean, obviously this is a culmination once again of this very critical moment. I'm seeing the generals are here. I see everyone is waiting with bated breath. Take us through to what can we expect now.
So the plane has landed. Minister Pandor, Minister Naledi, Minister Modise from Defense have had an occasion to meet with our nationals just as we're coming out of the plane. They are now being processed by Home Affairs through customs. They're going to get their luggage and then they will come out of those doors. We're quite happy that finally our people are home safely, and government has been able to, working with other people and those that we collaborated with, bring our people home. The High Commissioner of Zimbabwe is here and was able to hug his Zimbabwean national who was part of our group. There's a Lesotho national as well. So the ambassador of Sudan, by the way, to South Africa is also here because it was very helpful when we needed certain problems or we encountered certain problems and he had to intervene. So this has been a successful operation, not easy, risky, but our people are finally home, and you'll have an occasion to speak to them and ask them about how this experience was. They were very emotional. Most are in tears, as you can imagine. Just being home is an emotional thing after what they went through.
And obviously a lot of complexities where you had to deal with your counterparts to help those without travel documents and really just making sure that the process is done as immaculately as possible to make sure that everyone is safely evacuated and in a very secure environment. And you went as far as paying for their flight ticket as well.
Yes, but this shouldn't give you ideas about getting to dangerous places hoping you will pay for your flight. No, on a serious note, the Minister of Home Affairs was making the point that we had to produce 19 emergency travel documents as part of this operation because our people had left their passports in Sudan because obviously they left in a hurry and there's a lot of stuff that they had to leave behind. And as you were correctly saying, this meant negotiating with Egypt to relax their immigration laws and allow those people, given the circumstances under which we left Sudan. So it has not been an easy operation, but the South African government always steps up. Each time we have to bring our people home. If you think of COVID-19 and the people we brought home from China, if you think of what happened with the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we brought people home safely. Again, we're doing it again. So South Africans have a very good government that always looks after them when they are in distress abroad, each time, successfully. Unlike other governments that only evacuated diplomats, we brought everyone home, no one left behind.
Any just lessons to the South Africans? I mean, obviously, we do know that you have a number of initiatives like Travel Smart to conscientize people about what to do, especially where you do have a diplomatic mission that second after Washington, D.C., but of course, those are outside as well. In terms of any just significant lesson you want to share with South Africans?
So this is a very good question because it allows me to share information with the public. We always encourage South Africans who travel abroad to do three things. One, let us know. We've got an app. Go onto the app store of your smartphone and download DERCO Travel Smart app. It allows you to register and let us know where you're traveling. In case there is a situation where you are in distress and you require assistance, we're able to locate you and give you that assistance, which is not a favor. You are entitled to the consular assistance from government. The second thing we advise is get travel insurance. We've had unfortunate incidents where our people pass on in foreign countries, and the family is now burdened with bringing back their mortal remains for a burial. And in some cases, they don't have the funds or the means to do that. Travel insurance helps on such occasions. Or if you run out of money and you're on holiday, you've got travel insurance, it's helpful. So inform us, get travel insurance, make sure you find out if there's an embassy in the country that you're visiting. These embassies are there to help you and provide services to you and information critically.
And just before I let you go, say once again the reiteration of Pretoria's stance in as far as this conflict is concerned. We know that you have been calling for a resolution. You have been calling for the humanitarian access for the civilians really to be assisted, especially given the very gravity of the situation on the ground, where the healthcare facilities are under siege and a litany of other concerns as well.
Look, the principle that South Africa firmly believes in is that political problems are best resolved through dialogue. We advocate for a peaceful resolution of conflicts. In the case of Sudan, we've called for a ceasefire. This will allow a passage for humanitarian aid for those who are injured to be attended to. Hospitals are damaged. The few that are still operational are overcrowded. So there's a dire need for people to be attended to. But the bigger message is to call for peaceful resolution of what's currently happening, for negotiations. And we are ready to support the efforts of IGAD, the regional body, to mediate for a negotiated settlement out of what's happening. So that remains the goal, in line with the African Union's call and goal and objective of silencing the guns on the African continent.
And I would imagine also because with South Africa being a member of the AU Peace and Security Council, it's quite important to have a stable continent so that we can see development, so that we can address instabilities that continue to be a major obstruction in Africa's journey for the achievement of the ideals, aspirations enshrined, for example, on Agenda 2063.
The Africa we want. This continent is potentially the richest in the world. There's nothing that you don't find in Africa. So the continent is rich, but the African is poor because of what is currently happening, including this conflict that we're talking about. And of course, there are external players who fuel some of these things. And they mustn't think that we're not aware. But as Africans, this remains our goal, to have an African continent that is peaceful, that is developmental, to the benefit of Africans. So we'll continue to push for that as South Africa.
And just before I let you go, say, I'm looking on my left-hand side. I see that there are generals, representatives from the Defense and Military Veterans Department.
The Commissioner of the Border Management Authority, the new commissioner, is here. I'm going to drag him by the head. Give me one second.
Okay.
Commissioner, Masiapa.
All right.
He is the newly appointed Commissioner of the Border Management Authority. He can tell you more about what government is doing to ensure that our borders are secure, but also in this operation specifically, the travel documents we had to work on to just help our people to come home.
All right, so once again, sir, thank you so much and welcome to SABC News. Maybe just briefly, just tell us about your role in this operation and how important was it for you to be involved, especially when it comes to travel documents?
Yeah, you see, as the Border Management Authority, what we have actually done is we worked with our colleagues from the Department of Home Affairs. But what we basically did is we sent a delegation over into Egypt in particular, so that when the people arrived that side, especially those that might have lost their passports, they actually had to be assisted. So in that instances, we made sure that we give them emergency travel certificate for them to be able to come over. So out of all of the number that is actually arrived today, which is 53, we have 19 of those that we have given the emergency travel documents, as it were. Yeah.
And how was that experience? Because obviously you had to negotiate with your counterparts from Egypt and many other countries. How was that experience in terms of making sure that they understand? Or thanks to a very cordial relationship that you enjoy with these countries, and finally you were able to have a breakthrough?
Yeah, so indeed we really have a very, I would say, cordial diplomatic relation even with Sudan itself, and by the way, even with Egypt. So on that basis, we worked together with them and were then able to be assisted where we wanted their intervention in this particular process. So on that basis, we're able to work with them and make sure that we are able to facilitate our nationals to be able to come back home safely, as it were.
All right, so thank you so much indeed for your time. So, of course, Mxolisi, that's the Commissioner for BMA, that's a border management agency. So you can see that where we are positioned, it is a vantage point.